Hello, we ready to begin? Okay, hello, we're Melbourne High School's Team K. We are all seniors at the high school. My name is Kelly Colamberti.
I'm Brian Levy.
I'm Bobby Simon.
And I'm Lindsay Walker.
A quick overview of McDonald's polystyrene case is before 1990s, the McDonald's company was using a polystyrene clamshell box to house its Big Macs and sandwiches. This was met with some opposition, though, and by the end of 1990, the Environmental Defense Fund challenged McDonald's use of it, saying it was not environmentally friendly, and asked McDonald's to use paper boxes with a special coating that would still retain all of the polystyrene's use. In November 2nd, 1990, McDonald's announced that over the next 2 months it would phase out its old polystyrene boxes in order to be greener.
The primary stakeholders of this case include McDonald's, the paper industries, and the Environmental Defense Fund.
Okay, the effects on the primary stakeholders, for instance, McDonald's, what they stand to gain was their business reputation for switching to a more environmentally friendly box. This shows that their company is planning and presenting environmentally friendly ideas for progressing a clean energy movement. Another thing for McDonald's would be a possible loss in product quality. They were using their polystyrene cases for a reason. They used them because they retained the warmth for the hamburger, and they also did not absorb grease, such things like that would make the food last a little longer before you got it home to eat it. Another thing would be a loss of money. They're going to have to switch their packaging from polystyrene to this new paper product, so they're going to have to implement a whole new manufacturing chain for these new clamshell boxes. And but again, with their reputation, they will now be known for more as have a leadership role in environmental issues and the green movement. For the primary stakeholder of the Pro-Environmental Environment Packaging Council, they'll gain credibility as a lobby. What they had done was push through, and they will gain more power for their cause. Also, the Pro-Environment Packaging Council was funded by paper companies. These paper companies will obviously stand to gain quite a profit now that McDonald's will switch to using the paper to make their clamshell boxes.
There are two main secondary stakeholders, the McDonald's consumers and environmental groups, including the National Audubon Society and the Environmental Defense Fund.
Now, McDonald's consumers, when they're purchasing their value meals or what have you from the restaurant, they could go about this with a sense of feeling better about their purchase, as it was pushed forward through environmentalists and seen as a win for environmentalists. McDonald's consumers could shop there thinking that they will, of course, be shopping at a more environmentally friendly fast food chain. This could boost sales to McDonald's, but for the most part, it helps consumers. Environmentalist groups, of course, had a stake in this, and this was seen as a victory for these groups, as through power of public opinion, they could get a major corporation such as McDonald's to kind of change their marketing process and go for a more environmentally sound method. One of the first issues that arose ethically is the Pro-Environmental Packaging Council's motives. Now, the council was heralded and seen by a lot, of course, as pro-environmental, and the actual reasons why they've processed this and why they pushed for it is they were funded by paper companies. So although they at first come across as an environmental group, you could see them as even kind of harming the environment with their paper version of the product. this is kind of misleading.
Okay, as for the ethical issues of the targeting of schools, what the Pro-Environment Packaging Corporation did was they went to schools and advertised that this polystyrene was not the way to do it and it was harmful to the environment. So they proposed their alternative of their paper version of the clamshell. This is ethical because targeting a school of children, I mean, these are very susceptible kids to what you say to them. I mean, they're still learning, they're still taking in everything around them, and when you tell them something, it's, you know, almost kind of manipulative since they're, you know, they are children. And this could be seen as a really questionable audience to do your marketing for.
In addition, there would be a possible environmental fallout to switching to paper, and
some of the environmental aspects of switching to paper that were seen as beneficiary were actually not, since there were studies shown that switching to paper would cause its own environmental fallout, such as more air pollution, more water pollution, which we will show you in the next slide.
Another ethical issue to consider is whether it was McDonald's obligation to be environmentally friendly. As a business, it is foremost important to make a profit. Secondly, it is important to make sure that what you're doing is legal. And third and fourthly, you must be not just ethical, but also philanthropic. So McDonald's responsibility in this situation must be defined.
there's a conflict of paperboard versus polystyrene in this case. There are certain benefits and not so good aspects of both. For paperboard, according to the Reason Foundation, paperboard uses 30% more energy and it produces 40% more air pollution and 42% more water pollution. And another issue, of course, would be the cutting down of trees, since paper is cutting down all the trees. And then polystyrene, this, according to the Stanford Research Institute, there is an emission of toxic fumes, too much landfill, and it takes very slow time to biodegrade. Some possible solutions for the case would be to return to polystyrene, change to paperboard, or use a totally different packaging altogether.
If McDonald's would have chosen to return to the polystyrene packaging, it would have posed a number of problems. Among them would be the reluctant consumer base, who is already attached to the supposedly more environmentally friendly paper packaging. Also, they would have to deal with the issues of switching from their paper product producing plants back to the polystyrene plants. They were set to spend over $60 million on 7 plants in the early 1990s before the whole issue started. But some of the positive sides to return to polystyrene would be, of course, less of an environmental impact, according to Lynn Scarlett at the Reason Foundation, and also the National Audubon Society's claim of the effects on logging.
Another solution is that if McDonald's sticks with their paperboard product. Now, some pros of staying with the paperboard product is the manufacturing capabilities are already there. They're already functioning. This will be a lot easier. And it's also what's in the public opinion, because the public sees the paperboard products as a safer, cleaner, more environmentally friendly alternative to the foam polystyrene option. So it's a lot easier for the McDonald's base to go about staying with paperboard. However, a con is that this could be deleterious to the environment, as studies have been shown, or studies have found, that in fact this paperboard product may be more harmful to the environment than if they were to switch to a polystyrene, to the original polystyrene or another plastic-based model.
The last possible solution, of course, would be to find a completely different solution to paperboard or polystyrene. A pro of this would be that it would be an opportunity to be more environmentally friendly. Paperboard and polystyrene both have their negative effects, and it would be great if we could find something altogether different that would be better for the environment, and it would also be a good packaging source. The cons, of course, would be that this would take a lot of money, and McDonald's has already put a lot of money into the polystyrene and the paperboard, and this would just be a lot more money to develop a new solution, although it would be favorable.
Okay, for our optimal solution, we decided to stick with the paper clamshells. Right now, sticking with the paper clamshells would be the best solution for if we return to polystyrene. That would, of course, mean McDonald's would again have to switch their manufacturing and spend money in making polystyrene clamshells. And also, it would just go back to another environmentally unfriendly solution. So you would be trading one evil for another. At the same time, further research into alternative packaging is what we really want for our solution. Maybe some sort of possible 100% recycled paper clamshell. I mean, we're seeing more and more, you have the little logos on your paper that says made from this amount of recycled paper. And we could see that if we could get that into the clamshells, that could really make a difference for McDonald's and the corporation. So that concludes our presentation, and I'd like to thank you guys for being patient for us having to go in and click and trade off the microphone. So thank you.
What did you see as the main ethical dilemmas or main ethical issues in this case?
One of the main ethical issues I found was the targeting of the schools for their ad campaign. I just think if you're going to try to, sell some sort of idea, it'd probably be better to sell it to the people who are going to be manufacturing the new paper products that you're trying to sell, not to kids that are going to, be influenced by it so easily. So I think ethically the paper companies funding the pro-environment packaging corporation that was a little unsound.
I agree with Bobby. I think the main ethical fault lies with the pro-environment paper packaging commission. I'm sorry, council. It started with a C. I believe that in educating a group, it's necessary to first know the truth. Just as when I was reluctant to speak the name of the council without getting it right, I would like to make sure that I deliver a true message before I deliver it to you. And I believe the responsibility lied with the council to make sure that paper was truly the more environmentally sound option.
Kind of touching upon both what Bobby and Kelly said, with advertising to students, you're advertising to a younger age group, of course, and they're more susceptible to believe what an authority figure says to them and what an adult says to them. So for this, there's a lot of ethical issues that do arise on who your target audience really should be, and whether or not it's an interesting point how a corporation that's funded by the paper industries can make such an argument as they did, with an environmental argument, when their own corporations might be hurting the environment as well. I mean, that's kind of how business runs sometimes, though.
So, based on your presentation, if you were doing it all over again and you guys were in charge, what would you have done at that point?
Well, if we were in charge, I like to think that we'd put more research into whether or not the paper products the paperboard product really was more environmentally sound, or whether the polystyrene that they had going was, because studies later published by Stanford Research Institute, the Reason Institute? Council, thank you. And these were published showing that it can be seen as quite the opposite, where the polystyrene did seem better for the environment. So if McDonald's were to put a little bit of money into this research, they could have stayed with the product that they already had and kind of maintain the economic level.
But isn't a part of the dilemma here is that research was already concluded concluded at the time that they decided to make the switch. So the concern that they had was that a power play was being made by the children, or by utilizing the children so that it would affect sales. So I think they knew at that time, I could be wrong, but I believe that they knew at that time that it already was better to stay with the polystyrene product. So with that in mind, what would you guys have done with that, armed with that knowledge, and you were in charge at McDonald's?
To touch on what you were saying there, when they got this information and they were thinking about switching to the paper, the Environmental Fund Corporation was telling them that they were fighting with McDonald's, saying, you guys need to make this switch, and they were getting pressure from that corporation. Originally, McDonald's was going to make these polystyrene recycle plants to further their polystyrene production and also make them more environmentally friendly. But once they met the opposition, they found that they should probably switch to the paper products for the public opinion.
Even though that's wrong.
Even though that's wrong, and that's where an ethical issue of McDonald's comes in. Was that ethical of them? But at the same time, both sides have been shown to have environmental fallouts, such as air pollution on paper products side, and on the styrene side, slow biodegrade time and toxic fumes. So really, what are you trading for?
You're saying it's not that much of a trade.
Well, exactly. I mean, you really have to do more research and to figure out which one's doing more detriment to the environment.
I did try to consider it from the point of being the McDonald's CEO. I feel that the opposing forces, although they were not operating with the honest statistics in favor of the environment, what they did have was the publicity and the I don't want to refer to it as scare factor, but that's almost what it is. So I feel that it would really boil down to publicity, and even if I had succumbed to that as CEO and made the switch to paperboard, maybe I would probably realistically try to make up some excuses in my mind. But I would feel that, especially at this point where we're making another green leap in the past few years, that it would be acceptable to, while still trying to research for the best option, I would try to switch back to polystyrene clamshell boxes. I would try not to remind the public that we had them before and refer to them as the polystyrene clam boxes, but it's certainly better, even if we have to kind of dupe the public into not realizing that we're giving them something they're afraid of. It is ultimately the better option, and I feel ethically I would feel sound taking that course.
Do you believe that McDonald's could have done a better job of communicating the environmental knowledge that they had at the time, rather than giving in to the lobbyists and special interest groups?
I feel that's definitely an option, considering the money they have. But again, we have to take into consideration, when you're going to fast food, you're not there for a lesson. You're there for food, and you're out. So I'm sure it would be significantly difficult to reach that audience.
I think if McDonald's did have the information about the benefits of polystyrene, it would have been more advantageous for them to publish these and have a bigger advertising for the polystyrene at a sooner level, or at a sooner time, because by the time, if these publications were released about the goods that polystyrene has over paperboard, it was too late to re-sway the public opinion.
I ask you, very little facts before you about financial impact. So let me just maybe throw out two ideas. What if indeed this polystyrene clamshell keeps my burger hot and keeps it less greasy, and consumers like that, and if you switch, I'm going to have a cold, soggy burger, and it's going to have a negative impact on my sales. And number two, what if one of these options, let's just pick the paper option, costs twice as much as the styrene option? How do you factor that into your ethical deliberations?
Right. When we were creating our solutions and the optimal solution, it was hard to weigh up which one we really found optimal without knowing research about like the costs of each and kind of more the consumer base, which they do prefer. But one thing that we did bring up was kind of about the person that's like, I don't want the soggy kind of cold burger. You might have more people switching to it as a fast food chain that's more environmentally conscious. You would have that kind of pull towards not necessarily ecotourism, but kind of the pull towards a more environmental group, and that could kind of counterbalance those that might back out of it from the wet, soggy burger, as you claim.
It's interesting to me, I think you said that McDonald's has an obligation to be environmentally friendly. And I also remember you saying about the corporate duties to be profitable, legal, and ethical and philanthropic. And hopefully maybe not in that order, but because some of the profit in front of legal can get into some trouble. But where did the obligation to be environmentally friendly come from?
Well, we feel as a business, especially one as big as McDonald's, when you have that much power and that much sway, and you do most likely put off a lot of offset, as in pollution in the world because of your manufacturing, you need to do it in a conscious way so that what you're putting off isn't strictly for your own profit, but you're also helping out the environment, and you're keeping it to a more public, environmentally friendly manner. Do you have something to say?
Yeah. I mean, when we're talking about business and you're saying, profit and then their obligation to be green, I mean, business isn't just about making money. It's also about producing a product that's not only going to be, help, keep your burgers hot and juicy and whatnot, but also going to be environmentally friendly and not, you don't want to trade one thing for another. So, I mean, it really is their obligation to make sure their product is as good as it can be, whether it be keeping the burgers hot and also trying to maintain some environmental integrity.
Right. If we are going to go with that and just say, oh yeah, we're going to damage the environment to have our hot, warm burgers, well, we may have great burgers, but we're going to have another problem, an even greater problem. We're going to have problems with our environment, and that is obviously not superior to having a hot burger. I mean, that's obviously superior to having a hot burger.
Any other questions?
You say the environment's superior to having a hot burger. Nobody cares so much about the burger. Is it more important than the jobs of the hundreds of thousands of people who work at McDonald's, or the pensions of people who depend on McDonald's stock for their pensions? How does that weigh in? There's hot burgers, no. But how about the outcome of the hot burger of saving jobs and creating pensions and a stronger economy, etc.?
All right, now that's a good ethical question. I think what that boils down to is, again, try to find your balance. I mean, the McDonald's is not going to go under because their boxes are not keeping their burgers as hot as they used to be. They're a huge corporation. But at the same time, you pose a good point. If you want to keep this franchise running healthy, because so many people depend on it in America right now, especially during these economic times. And what you just have to factor in is, you want to keep your burgers hot, you want to keep your product, healthy, so people keep buying it. You want to keep your company up and running, but you also just we want to get this environment good too. We want to make sure our product isn't, hurting the environment just for our employees, because also you have to factor in, with McDonald's trying to be more environmentally conscientious, it can show other companies that they need to be more environmentally conscientious too. So it can have a chain effect where other companies will understand that they need to also find the balance as well, and not just try to create a superior product, but also be wary of the environmental effects. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Anyone else? That's a great job.
Thank you.